All right. Well, good morning, Rotary District 7770, and welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Monday, January 18th. My name is Donald Hovis, and I'm your CWRAP host from the CWRAP Rotary Club in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We're pleased to be joined this morning with a fellow Rotarian from the Seattle, Washington area, Shari Storm. Shari, we look forward to your presentation in a few minutes. And I can tell you what an interesting topic for what we're currently going through is how to work together when you can't be together. Looking forward to it. I'll get to you in just a moment after some announcements. Those of you on the call, thanks for being here. I see several of you have already gone to the chat box. So please go to the chat box, put your name, your Rotary Club, and answer this question. If you made a New Year's resolution and you're currently still doing your New Year's resolution, I want you to put that in the chat box. As you know, we're past halfway of January, and typically over 60% of people are no longer doing their New Year's resolution, even that was established 15 or 20 days ago. Your CWRAP team, our wonderful public image chair from the 5 Points Rotary Club in Columbia, Mary Gass. Good morning, Mary. Mary arranged our wonderful speaker to be with us today. So, Shari, first of all, thank you and welcome to South Carolina virtually. I see you're a Rotarian from the Rotary Club of Emerald City in Seattle. How many members in your club?
About 35.
Excellent. And how long have you been a Rotarian?
Since 2006.
Awesome. Awesome. Ever held any leadership positions?
I have been the program chair for maybe a decade.
Awesome. Well, I know you have a presentation. I will say those of you that are on the call, if you have a question for Shari while she is doing her presentation, post that in the chat box and I will ask those questions to her at the end of the presentation. So Shari, take it away.
All right, well, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. There you go. So I had been a Rotarian, I had been an executive for many years before I had children. I now have 3. They are Rebecca, Lexi, and JoJo. And I found that once I had children, I was actually better at my job. I was a better problem solver. I had more creativity. I had more perspective. I had more empathy. Could prioritize better. I found to be being a working mom to be something that was actually good for my career, which was the opposite of everything that I had been told up until that point. And so I got sort of caught up in this idea that being a working parent could actually make you better at your job. So caught up, in fact, that I thought, maybe I'll write a book about it. Have any of you ever done that? You find a new passion and you think, maybe I'll write a book or start a blog, or I'm looking at all of you, start a podcast. I am not seeing any vigorous head noddings. You know, people from North Carolina have always struck me as sort of sensible folk. No, I'm just kidding. If you want to write a book, you should do it. So this idea of writing a book kicked around in my head for about 2 years until one day I was at work. And I had suspected that a coworker had done something. And so I asked her about it. And as she began to answer me, I looked at her and I thought, wait, I know that look. Oh, I know that look. That's the look my 2-year-old gives me when I ask her, Rebecca, did you put your sneaker in the toilet? And she looked at me and says, no, it must have been Daddy. It's the look she gives me when she's lying to me. And it occurred to me at that moment that human nature is human nature. Whether we are 2 or we are 92, we're pretty much hardwired the same way. And if you're a parent, you deal with human nature up close, uncensored, unfiltered, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I thought, aha, that's the idea for my book. So I pitched the idea and I pitched the idea and I pitched the idea. And finally, a publishing house got back to me and they said, well, we like the idea, but what we're really in the market for right now is an advice book. To which I said, oh my God, guess what? I love giving advice. As a matter of fact, next to my opinion, it is my favorite thing to give. And so I signed a deal with St. Martin's Press. And when the book first came out, it got a lot of publicity. And the reason that it got a lot of publicity is this. In our culture, in our country, the way that we think about, the way that we talk about, the way that we teach business really revolves around 2 metaphors. And those metaphors are battle or war or sports. And these metaphors are problematic. And I'm going to step back. I'm going to say this. There is a lot to be learned from the military. I will never dispute that. And there is a lot of good to to come of organized sports. Again, not dispute that. However, if you view business like a battle, you you leave out a lot of important components, things like compassion, nurturing environments, mutually beneficial outcomes, things people want in their job, and you pile on things that people don't necessarily want in their workaday life, like a common vilified enemy or kill or be killed, winner takes all, loser has nothing, that sort of mentality. But to me, the more problematic uh, metaphor for business is this idea that business is just like sports. And the reason that I find it problematic personally is because of women's relationship to and our role in sports in our country. Most women, not all, but most of us don't consume sports at the rate that a lot of our male counterparts do. And whenever I give this presentation in person, there's always one woman who raises her hand and says, well, I voluntarily pay for 159 channels of ESPN and I watch it all weekend. Not necessarily the norm for most women. But more importantly is we're not leaders on the national stage. We have fantastic, hardworking, talented female athletes. Go Sarah Fuller. Sarah Fuller, anyone? Yeah. Sue Bird? Yeah. We women don't garner the same fame and fortune as our male counterparts. And so what that does, I think on a level that women can't even necessarily consciously articulate, it erodes our self-confidence. It erodes our self-confidence. When business is equated to two different things that women don't necessarily play large roles in, it erodes our self-confidence. So you think about business in terms of family. Now you're talking about a framework that is compassionate and nurturing and has women in very visible leadership roles. So I'm telling you all of this only to get to this point. When my book first came out and I started getting a lot of publicity, I loved being a celebrity. I did. I loved it. But my mom, she was nonplussed. I would call my mom. I say, Mom, guess what? I am in Time magazine this week. And oh, my earbud fell out. And Redbook magazine this week. And she'd say, uh-huh. And I'd call her and I'd say, Mom, I'm going to be on Martha Stewart and I'm on the cover of the Metro News New York. And she'd say, uh-huh. Finally, one day my phone rings and it's my mom's voice. And she says, you're in the Costco connection? And I had arrived. So I'd been giving this presentation for a very long time. The presentation and I'm a professional public speaker. My presentation and my career took a drastic turn on March 10 because that's when Washington State shut down. And so I redid my presentation and now I start with this. I start with this saying, a problem well stated is a problem half solved. I love this saying. I've had it above my desk for decades. And what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about sort of the unique stressors that we have been facing since last March and 3 tips for you to use to maintain strong bonds with the ones you care about most based on these 3 unique stressors. So sound good? So the first unique stressor is we've got these physical disruptions. These things that we were physically used to doing, we cannot do like we did before. We can't meet in person. We can't, I don't know where your state is at this particular moment in time, but we can't go to restaurants, we can't go to bars, we can't go to church, we can't go to gyms. We can't. A lot of us are working from home. And if you're anything like this poor woman, if you are working from home, you may very well be working in a totally ergonomically incorrect little corner of your house. If you have children and the children are online learning right now, this image probably speaks to you while you're trying to work. Maybe you don't have kids underfoot. Maybe you have cats over keyboards. I mean, who would have thought that our pets would be interrupting our Rotary meetings? But here we are. We might be quarantining or working from home with our spouses for the first time. Funny thing about quarantine, I found this tweet that I found funny because I will sometimes make fun of my husband when I hear him on work calls. The funny thing about quarantining with your partner is hearing them in full work mode for the first time. Like, I'm married to a let's circle back guy. Who knew? Uh, we be strong. I whisper to my Wi-Fi. We've got all of these new technologies that we have to learn. And when they work, they're fantastic. When they don't, it's so very vexing, and it just seems like we keep riding this learning curve with the technology. Um, we have everyone's on edge. Everyone is on edge. I found this quote at the beginning of the pandemic. We're not all in the same boat, but we all are in the same storm. And back at the beginning of the pandemic, I felt like this was very poetic. It spoke to me. 10 months later, I find this less poetic and more problematic because what I have seen happen since the pandemic began was that we are all on edge, right? We are all concerned about the health of ourselves, our loved ones, our communities. We're concerned about our economy. We're concerned about the political climate and the civil unrest. However, we are very divided in terms of who is the culprit, what is the culprit, and what is the solution. What will the solution be? And it is stressful when people that you love, that you respect, that you care about have diametrically opposing worldviews than you do. That's stressful. That can cause acute stress. And it is compounded by the fact that we're all on most of us are on Facebook or some other type of social media where we are seeing our loved ones' views maybe for the first time. I often joke, like, I liked you a lot better before we were Facebook friends. So this is stressful. One really quick, we were talking about vaccines when I first logged on. I have a cousin who's a nurse here in Seattle, and she just got her vaccination. Her parents, my auntie and uncle, are very against vaccines for a myriad of reasons, and they go at it on Facebook, and that is stressful to watch people you love fight about something like vaccines, right? And it seems like there are all sorts of hidden landmines that upset people that you might not even know about these days. There's a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of uncertainty. Okay, I'm going to show you a video. And I want to tell you, this video was actually produced in April of last year, and it seems like nothing has changed. And I'll play it really quickly. I love it.
Yeah, I really don't understand why everybody isn't following the same rules right now. They're very clear. So let's take a minute and let's go over them again. First, you must not leave the house for any reason, unless of course you have a reason, and then you may leave the house. All stores are closed except those that are open. And all stores must close unless, of course, they need to stay open. This virus is deadly, but don't be afraid of it. It can only kill people who are vulnerable and also those who are not vulnerable. We should stay locked down until the virus stops infecting people. And it will only stop infecting people if enough of us get infected that we build immunity. So it is very important that we get infected and also do not get infected. You should not go to the doctor's office or the hospital unless you have to go there. Unless, of course, you are too sick to go there. This virus has no effect on children except for those children in which it affects. The virus remains active on different surfaces for 2 hours or 4 hours or 6 hours, but in most cases it's days and not hours, and it needs a damp environment or a cold environment that is warm and dry in the air. Unless the air is plastic. Schools are closed, so you need to homeschool your children unless you can send them to school because you are not home. If you are at home, you can school your children using various portals and online classrooms unless you have poor internet, more than one child, only one computer, or you are working from home. Baking cakes can be considered math, science, or art. If you are home educating, you can include household chores within their education curriculum. And if you are home educating, you may start drinking at approximately 10 a.m. every day. If you are not home educating children, you may also start drinking at approximately 10 a.m. Masks are useless at protecting you against the virus, but you still need to wear one because it can save lives. And in some cases, it may even be mandatory, but also maybe not. You must not go to work, but you can get another job, at which point you may go to work. Stay home. I don't know how many more celebrities we need to have tell you how important it is to go outside and take care of your mental health. There is no shortage of groceries in the supermarket. There are simply many things missing. You don't need to go buy a bunch of toilet paper, but you should buy some in case you need it. If you are sick, you may go out once you are better, but those in your household, they cannot go out once you are better unless, of course, they need to go out. Animals are not affected by the virus, except for that cat that tested positive in Belgium in February. plus a couple tigers. The number of corona-related deaths will be announced daily, but we don't know how many people are infected because we were only testing those who are almost dead to determine if that's what they will die of. The people who die of corona who are not counted won't or will be counted, but maybe not. To help protect yourself during these times, you should be eating well and exercising, but exercising only eating what you have at home to avoid going to the stores unless you need toilet paper or a fence panel. It's important to get fresh air, but don't go to parks, but do go walk in other places. Just don't sit down unless you are old or pregnant. But if you do sit down, don't sit for too long. Unless you are old and you are pregnant, in which case you need to sit down. But if you do sit down, don't eat unless you've had a long walk, which you are allowed to do if you are old or pregnant, except for times in which you aren't. Don't visit old people, but you have a moral obligation to take care of old people and bring them food and medicine. And finally, no businesses will go down due to coronavirus except those businesses that go down due to COVID-19. I hope this cleared up any questions about what we should and should not be doing during this time. Please educate your friends and family with this information so we can remove any and all confusion surrounding this time. Thank you.
It seems like nothing has changed, right? I mean, well, hopefully we're not all still drinking at 10 a.m. Hopefully that phase has passed. So 3 pieces of advice for maintaining strong bonds with those you care about most. Number 1 is be mindful of your communication channels. Here is something, another thing that I have noticed. We are turning to Zoom a lot more, which on the surface makes sense, right? But if you have anything sensitive to communicate, I would recommend that you use voice, the telephone. Now, you all know this, it's not your first rodeo. If there's something that you need to tell somebody and it's sensitive, you don't want to text it, you don't want to email it. But I would say you also don't want to Zoom it. A really quick story, in my Rotary Club, in the middle, in the summer, when we got a new Rotary president, I had to have a conversation with him about another person in our club. And so I emailed him and asked him if I could talk to him about it. And he said, sure, let's get on Zoom. Great, okay. So it was sensitive. So I had to practice what I wanted to say, right? And so our Rotary president's named Joel. And so we get on the Zoom and I say my piece and I take a deep breath and I say my piece. And then I look at the box and Joel looks like this because he's frozen, right? He'd frozen. So he unfreezes and he says, I'm sorry, didn't catch it. Can you say it again? So I take a deep breath and I say my piece again. And you know, the conversation ended as I wanted it to. His response was good and it was fine. But when I got to the phone, I was still anxious. I still had this really low grade weird stress. And so I did a little research. 2 things happen when you are on Zoom. Number 1 is there is always a slight lag. Sometimes there's that major lag, like with what happened with me and Joel, but there's always a slight lag. Second thing is you cannot look one another in the eye, right? If you think I'm looking you in the eye right now, it's because I've trained myself to stare at a little green dot on the top of my screen. If I were to really look you in the eye, I would be looking like this. This is me looking you in the eye right now. See the difference? The fact that there is a slight, almost imperceptible delay and there is no eye contact tells that reptilian part of your brain, this is weird. There might be danger. Something's wrong. I don't know if I trust this person. And again, in a way that you might not even be able to consciously articulate, it actually is stressful. Zoom fatigue is real. Use the telephone. Second thing is understand how the brain works under pressure. So there are tons of studies that show that if most humans, if they spend a lot of time experiencing chronic stress, several things happen. Number 1 is they're not as smart as they usually are, right? We lose some of our mental capacity, some of our memory. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you experience that. Number 2, we don't have the same executive function. We don't act and respond as well as we normally do. And third, we have less emotional intelligence. Basically, we're not on the top of our game. This is all making us a little bit not on top of our game. So number 1, remember that when you're dealing with other people, if other people say the wrong thing or forget to do something or don't come through for you, give them space and grace because of the stress that we're all under. But more importantly, if you're anything like me and you tend to put your foot in your mouth, I can put my foot in my mouth like nobody's business, which is hilarious since I'm a professional public speaker. But a long time ago, somebody gave me a piece of advice. They said, have a phrase you use when you don't want to say anything at all. Because if your first response is not your best nor your final response, if your first response, if you're like me, is usually your dumbest response, have a phrase you use when somebody upsets you or takes you off guard or annoys you or, gets your shackles up. For me, it's not a phrase, it's a sound. And the sound is this, huh. Let's all try that on the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Huh. One more time. Huh. See how that feels? So when your best employee comes into your office, sits down in front of your desk and says, I just found out that so-and-so makes more money than I do. And if I don't get a raise, I'm going to quit. Huh. I value you and I want to approach this properly. Can I have a moment to think this through? Can we talk again at the end of the day? You rarely can go wrong when somebody that you care about says something that, I'll use the word trigger, although I hate that word, triggers you. You rarely can go wrong if your first response is, I value you. And then you take a deep breath and decide how you want to answer. So have a phrase you use when you don't want to say anything at all. Last piece of advice, celebrate. I love studying how groups, companies, clubs celebrate, because what you celebrate and how you celebrate can be such a motivator. It can be such a team builder. It really solidifies who you are as a group. I'm going to give you 2 examples of companies that I think do a really good job of being deliberate about what they celebrate. And the first is Highlights Magazine. Do you all know what Highlights Magazine is? Yes, I'm seeing a vigorous head nod. Yes, I like it. Highlights Magazine is the magazine for children. It has like the hidden pictures, and it often has comic strips and poems the kids write, all sorts of things. So at any rate, I was speaking at a conference back in San Diego and a while ago, and the man who was going to speak right after me was the vice president of sales for Highlights Magazine, which made me say, never occurred to me that somebody actually works for Highlights Magazine. But of course they do, right? And so I stuck around to watch him. He was fascinating. And one of the things he said was that it's actually very hard to sell Highlights Magazine subscriptions. And the reason that it's hard is there's actually only 2 people in the universe who buy them. Anyone can guess? I know you're all good at using chat. Any guesses on who buys Highlights Magazine subscriptions? Let's see if any guesses.
Grandparents.
Grandparents. Well, can we put a finer point on that? Is it grandparents?
Grandmas.
Grandma. Yes, grandmas. And who else? Dentists. Grandmas and dentists.
Yes.
So that's who you're trying to sell to right there, is grandmas and dentists. And so when you have been told no 100 times in a row, there's an award that you get, and it's called the SWSWSW award. It stands for some will buy, some will not, someone's waiting. And you get this award when 100 people in a row have told you no. When you have been turned down 100 consecutive times, there is a rope in the middle of the room with a cowbell on the end of the cowbell, and you get to stand up and you get to ring the heck out of this cowbell. And all of your coworkers start clapping and they have confetti guns under their desk, and they take out their confetti guns and they shoot you with confetti, and you hoop and you holler, and you're the person of the moment. And then you sit down and you make your 101st phone call. He says, every sales program you say will say, we reward results, right? Which makes sense. He said, I can't keep anyone if all I rewarded results. I need to reward effort. I need people who are tenacious and optimistic and persistent. You can't be told no 100 times in a row and still pick up the phone and make their 101st phone call. I reward effort. Second company is Apple Computer. Are you familiar with Apple Computer? I'm sure most of you have an Apple device in your life by now. So if you, in the olden days, if you had one of your Apple devices break you could take it to an Apple store, and in the back of the store, they had a counter called the Genius Bar, where somebody whom they called a genius would work on your device. So a few years ago, I was at the Alderwood Mall Apple store, and because my laptop was broken, and the genius was working on my laptop. And after a moment, he says to me, "Oh, we're about to. It's going to get loud in here. We're about to have a tap out." To which I responded, "None of those words that you just said to me make any sense." He goes, "Oh, it's this thing that we do on an employee's last day." So okay. Now, if you can picture. Behind me is a door that leads to the back office of the Apple store. And right in front of me is the door that spills out into the mall. Can you kind of picture that? So after a moment, the back door opens and out comes a very managerial looking genius. And he says to everyone in the store, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Mackenzie so-and-so, who's not going to work at the Alderwood Apple store anymore because she's going to Bellevue Community College." And he steps aside, and out come all of these Apple employees. Apple stores are like clown cars. There are so many geniuses in the back room, you don't even know. And they make 2 rows from the back door to the front door. And then out comes Mackenzie, just as sweet as she can be. And she starts to walk through this line of coworkers, and they're hugging her, and they're high-fiving her, and they're taking selfies with her. And the manager has all of us customers clapping because Mackenzie's going to college. God bless America. And it takes her about 45 seconds to walk to the back door, to the front door, and then she steps out, and that's her last moment of employment at Apple Computer. And I thought, now that's genius. That's genius. Because your former employees, your former club members can be your best advocates. How do people leave you? How do people leave your club? Because let's face it, Mackenzie works retail at a suburban shopping mall. She put up with a bunch of crap in her job. You know that she did. But you could see those memories fading away and being replaced by memories of, I would say, love from her coworkers. Now, had Mackenzie like stolen an iPhone, I'm sure there's a different door for those employees that we don't know about. But point being, how do people leave your club? How do they leave your club? Okay, so I am going to ask you right now. Have any of you started new rituals? Do you have anything that you can share with me about new rituals that you've started? Anything to share? Any pandemic rituals? Anything?
I'll share something, Shari. It's not really a pandemic ritual, but it's something I do every single day, no matter the weather, is I go for a sunrise trip to the beach, and then I'll walk afterwards every day.
Nice. Yes. This sort of I've heard a lot of people doing sort of this meditative, um, uh, not exercises, but things that sort of clear your head and put you right for the beginning. It sounds for you like the beginning of the day and the end of the day. I love it. Making meal lists and grocery lists. Didn't do that before COVID. Yeah, there is a lot of pleasure in being well organized, isn't there? Watching CWRAP. Yes, I love it. Okay. Yes, I love it. Okay, so praying. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. How could we get through without that? For sure. All right. So then the last thing I'm going to do is, if I can find, is I'm going to read you just a couple of pages from my book. And it's the chapter is called "There's No Such Thing as a Family Secret." And basically what the chapter says is you can't treat the way you treat your employees or the way that they'll treat your customers, and the way that you treat your club members is the way that they're going to represent you in the community. I mean, basically it's don't be a jerk. It's you know what, it's a very 4-way test-ish in its sentiments. Because, you know, I found this too. When it's all over, I'm going to ask every employer that I ever interview with, tell me how you treated your employees during the pandemic. And I think this message is true, particularly for Rotary clubs. Right now, we are stepping up to the plate, and we are showing our communities how much that we can make an impact in hard times. And this is like what Rotary to do. It's our time to shine. It's what we were built for. So at any rate, there's no such thing as a family secret. So when I was a few months pregnant with Johanna, who's my third daughter, I had to pick up 2 of my vendors from the airport. they were going to spend a week at my credit union. So we decided to have dinner together on their first night in Seattle. As luck would have it, my childcare fell through. My husband had to work, so I had to take my 2 young daughters to dinner with me. As 3-year-old Rebecca warmed up to the men, she began to chat. You know what? She asked them one time. Daddy ate mommy's cookies that she keeps in her car for when she gets hungry. He took her car to ski patrol and he ate all of her cookies. And when he got back, she told him, no, you don't eat all of the cookies. You eat 1 or 2, but then you have to stop. And you know what? One time I throwed up in the car in a bowl, and Daddy couldn't go to the Husky game because I throwed up. But one time mommy threw up in the sink. She threw up in the sink because she has a baby in her tummy and it makes her a little sick sometimes. I didn't want my vendor knowing that I once barfed in my own sink. And I really didn't want them to know that I have a stash of cookies that I keep in my car for whenever I get hungry. But I didn't want anyone to know that I once yelled at my poor husband because he ate my car stash cookies. But if you're a parent of a child who is old enough to speak, you know that everything, but everything is always fair game for the telling. So my book came out when Rebecca was 6 years old, and I was making dinner one night and I had a stack of them on the kitchen table. She walks in, she pulls one out, she opens it up, she sees her name, so she starts to read. Suddenly she slams the book shut and she said, seriously, Mom, you told the whole world I threw up in the car? And I looked at her and I had the dreadful, overwhelming realization. My book is written at a first grade reading level. Good parents are singly focused on building a world in which their children flourish. A good parent is relentless to ensure their children thrive. Imagine if we all did the same for our teams. And that, my friends, is the presentation. That list right there is all the ways you can get a hold of me. Thank you if you ever want to. I'm going to quickly tell you one thing. That link down at the bottom, that's how you can order a copy of my book. They are $15 and I can take cash, check, credit cards, or Bitcoin. Just kidding. I know nothing about Bitcoin and it confuses me like heck. But a signed copy makes an excellent gift. That is my presentation. Do you have questions?
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I will go through and see if there are any questions in the chat. Let's see here. I think the Gerards deserve a prize for saying CWRAP is a thing that they I'm looking here for questions. I just see a bunch of comments.
Donald, there's a question at the end from Lou.
Yep, I just see it right now, just posted. Have you been able to travel during the pandemic?
Is that question for me or for the group? For me?
You.
No. So no, with one exception. I spoke at my first hybrid conference in Kansas City in the fall. And it was a conference that had 1/3 of the people there in person, but distanced and with masks, and then 1/3 of the people on Zoom, and then 1/3 of the people live streaming. So I've been to one place since last March, and that was Kansas City, Missouri. It's not, it's if that's how, if you make your living as a professional public speaker, it's not fun to have a pandemic say you can't travel. That's no fun.
Well, excellent. Thanks for being on here today. We really appreciate it. I don't see any other questions at this time, so I will go into announcements at this point. Let me see here. Coming up on Wednesday, let me pull up the message here. Wednesday, we are going to be joined by Chris Cothran with the state EMS. He's going to be talking about training of the EMS techs. And then I believe we have a special announcement for something that may happen on Friday, and I'll ask District Governor Pauline to come off of mute and tell us.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to give a heads up. I'll be getting an email out shortly, but also on the district website is a calendar link. Our Thursday happy hour will start at 5, but we'll end at 6 for a special meeting regarding how Rotary District 7770 and 7750 working together to provide a statewide support for the COVID-19 vaccinations via our hospital networks, so MUSC. So you'll be able to hear more about it. I don't know if we got a speaker for Friday, so I might have someone available then. Okay, maybe we'll do a part 2 for folks who didn't do the evening one or didn't see the email right away. But it's you're right, Sherry. It's our time to serve, right? It's our time to grow. It's our time to respond. We're people of action, and that's exactly what our heart tells us to do. So look forward to perhaps having you join us on that Thursday meeting. We're in the beginning stages, but we do have a relationship and a pilot program starting this week in Mount Pleasant, actually, Lou. So we're going to learn from that and grow from there. So I hope you can make it either Thursday evening or Friday at noon.
And sorry, Friday will be at 11.
I mean 11, yes. Wednesday said no, yes, 11, sorry.
No problem. No problem at all. Thanks for that. And that should be a fun presentation. So with that being said, Shari, thanks again for a wonderful presentation. Thank you folks for joining us. I will conclude with the Rotary 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a wonderful Monday. See you on Wednesday at noon for the next conversation with Rotary Action People. Take care. That's a wrap.